The Relay on YouTube. Check it out. Lots of stories about me on there. All the boxing facts and info that you want in a very entertaining, educational manner. The Relay. Check it out on YouTube.
Welcome to the motherfucking Relay, where we're covering today's top boxing news.
Let's start off this segment in keeping with the theme of our previous video, shedding light on new up-and-coming talented fighters as opposed to mulling over the same old tired subjects in regards to the same old tired fighters. Same old tired situations that any variety of YouTube channels are already talking about to no end. The sport of boxing is bigger than just the 4 or 5, 6 fighters that you like to watch.
Exactly.
But you'd never know it if you go to these other channels. Well, you know, just in keeping with the theme of my previous video, another fighter that's hailing from the land down under, more or less. You know, another fighter that caught my attention is a fighter that goes by the name of Shaniqua Johnson, a native to New Zealand who resides. And I've many of the same sentiments in regards to Shaniqua Johnson, aka Sugar Neekz, that I had in regards to Ebony Bridges, to where this is a fighter that has a very pleasing aesthetic, very easy on the eyes, and this can lend itself to a fighter's commercial appeal, their marketability. Understand that a fighter with a pleasing aesthetic, a fighter that's a looker, can draw in the casual observer, draw in the otherwise uneducated fight fan simply by captivating them with their good looks. I mean, it does help. Let's face the facts, okay? It's a lot easier to sell a crock pot when there's a pretty face holding it. It's a lot easier to sell a fight when you've got someone with an aesthetic like an Ebony Bridges or a Sugar Neekz.
They get attention.
But the beauty of it all is these really are talented fighters, talented athletes. I mean, one look at Shaniqua Johnson and you see that this girl, she's the real thing. She's the real deal. She's a lot further along in her career than Ebony Bridges. Ebony Bridges, who went pro in February of last year, and so far has only been a pro for, you know, close to a year.
Wherever Sugar Neekz.
Shaniqua Johnson has been a professional boxer since April 9th of 2016, currently sporting a professional record of 13 wins, no losses, with 6 knockouts. Ow! Sugar Neekz is listed as a bantamweight, much like Ebony Bridges, although Shaniqua's last 2 professional contests were at the super bantamweight limit of 122 pounds. It's conceivable that she could move seamlessly between the two, depending on what opportunities present themselves. And what you immediately notice about Shaniqua is her athleticism. She's got a very fan-friendly style.
Good movement.
Bit unconventional, not your atypical textbook high guard boxer firing off the left hand. No, sir. Sugar Neekz does have some nuance. I would say that she's a bit more put together, a bit more of a finished product, or closer to it, than Ebony, because Sugar has been a professional longer. And the athleticism, the mobility, the angles of Sugar Neekz, the way she navigates the ring or maneuvers that torso to slip shots and still stay in position to counter.
All makes for a fun fight.
The in and out game of Sugar Neekz. This is a fighter that has a pep in her step.
Good mobility.
She can bounce in and out of range, very similar to what we see from a Sinicia Estrada or a Davis-Gamboa, to where you are dealing with a boxer-puncher, but do realize that not all boxer-punchers are created equal. There are those boxer-punchers out there, like Sugar Neekz, who exhibit a lot of speed, a lot of mobility, a lot of athleticism, and they're confident enough in these physical attributes that they're not as conventional or orthodox as some others. You'll notice that Sugar fights with the left hand low. You know, she's not going out there in some tight high guard. She believes in her speed and reflexes enough to where she
can do so.
Uses in and out game as her primary defense, angling that head, angling that torso to slip shots, get under shots, but still stay in position to fire off counter shots without giving up too much ground, without losing position to land some shots of her own. I'd say that Sugar Neekz does her best work mid-range to inside. She's not some long-distance outside jabber. Rather, she bounces in and out between the two, and when she's in range, she's usually mid-range to inside, where she's getting off those hard shots, those hard, compact hooks. I have to say that Sugar Neekz looks like she could be a threat to just about any world champion between 118 and 122 pounds. This girl serious business. Now, depending on where Sugar Neekz decides to campaign moving forward in the year of 2020, whether she decides to proceed as a bantamweight or as a super bantamweight like she did in her last 2 professional contests, that alters the probability of her procuring a world title and who she'd have to go through to get one. At bantamweight, there's no shortage of world champions, and 2 of them just so happen to be pound-for-pound fighters, accomplished fighters on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list. You've got Mexico's own Mariana Juarez and Daniela Bermudez. Getting a world title from either one of them really is a tough ask, even for somebody as good as Sugar Neekz. Whereas if you go upstairs to the super bantamweight division, oh yeah, there's world champions. There's Denmark's own Dina Thorsland, undefeated WBO champion, fast making a name for herself. There's Argentina's very accomplished Marcela Tigresa Acuña, holding the IBF title, a very accomplished fighter, the most accomplished fighter, the most accomplished champion at the weight. And then there's Mexico's own Yamilet Mercado, holding the WBC title. She won the title late last year and is the youngest of the 3 reigning champions at this weight. But you'll notice that the WBA title is vacant. And one could hypothesize that this could be a title that Sugar Neekz shoots for. I mean, it is an opportunity. You would face less resistance shooting for that vacant title than attempting to pry one away from either Tigresa Acuña or Daniela Bermudez or Barbie Juarez, you know, if you shoot for the vacant title. It's an opportunity, and it's something that could happen because, well, Sugar, her last 2 fights, they were in the super bantamweight division in spite of her being listed as a bantamweight. So there's an area of opportunity there that could see Sugar Neekz becoming a world champion sometime this year. So for now, keep your eyes peeled on Shaniqua Johnson and the progression of her professional career. Moving on, the viewership numbers are in for this past weekend's fight involving Gervonta Davis and Davis-Gamboa, and the average viewership for the card was somewhere around 577,000, whereas the peak viewership for the card was something to the tune of 604,000. And as expected, Gervonta Davis' supporters, his fans, they're using this as a means to state his celebrity, that he has arrived, that these numbers confirm that he's a superstar.
Sure about that?
And listen, I'm not taking a piss. I'm not being critical for the sake of being critical. I'm looking at the available information and cross-referencing what other available information is out there. Does doing these kinds of numbers on a premium cable network like Showtime, does that make you a celebrity?
Does it?
And I dare say no. I dare say no because doing these kinds of numbers on a premium cable network that's been putting up low numbers all year, doing these kinds of numbers is more of a personal best as opposed to confirmation of celebrity and superstar status, because in reality, these are not superstar numbers. I mean, was anybody shouting from the rooftops when Daniel Jacobs put up over 700,000 views on HBO, back when HBO was in the business of boxing? Was anybody shouting from the rooftops that Daniel Jacobs is a star and he has arrived?
No.
When he put up over 700,000 views fighting the likes of Luisa Rios?
No.
Was anybody shouting from the rooftops when that same Daniel Jacobs put up even more views than that fighting Maciej Sulecki, something to the tune of over 800,000 viewers? Was anybody shouting from the rooftops that Daniel Jacobs is a superstar, he's a pay-per-view attraction?
No.
No, they weren't.
No.
I think most people agreed in that situation that Daniel Jacobs was definitely doing well for himself and he was on the up and up. I mean, I think most people could have agreed on that, but nobody was calling him a superstar because of those numbers. And those numbers that Daniel Jacobs was putting up back then are substantially bigger numbers than what Gervonta Davis is putting up here today. Those are the facts. And when Daniel was putting up those numbers, nobody was calling him a superstar. Nobody was calling him the next big thing or the next it. So what exactly is the precedence to do so with Gervonta Davis when he's putting up less numbers than Daniel Jacobs was? This is what I characterize, and you guys have heard me say this before, this is what I characterize as the celebration of mediocrity. It's kind of like what you do with your kid, you know, when they're a baby and they're learning how to pee and shit, and they're learning how to use utensils and spoons. You celebrate every little thing that they do.
When they're babies.
But when you do that to a professional fighter who's been running around calling himself the top dog of the weight class, calling himself the cash cow of the division, that no one is above him, when you do this to a guy like that, well, all you're really doing is celebrating his mediocrity. You're trying to tune out the rest of the boxing world as if Vasyl Lomachenko hasn't put up way bigger numbers than this. As if more people, more American households haven't been watching Vasyl Lomachenko fights as opposed to Gervonta Davis fights. You're just celebrating that guy's mediocrity. There's a lot of people out there who want you to believe that Gervonta Davis is a bigger star than he is, so that his demeanor towards certain fights can be justified. Because this guy acts like he's king shit, yet he's never been on pay-per-view. And oddly enough, a guy with less fights
than Gervonta Davis
could very well participate in a pay-per-view his very next fight. And that guy's name is Teofimo fucking Lopez. That's fucking right. The exact opposite of what Gervonta Davis is. Where Gervonta Davis spent 3 years trying to get away from Vasyl Lomachenko, Teofimo spent that time working his way towards him. Teofimo didn't win a world title for the sake of just winning a world title. He won it so he could corner Vasyl Lomachenko, so that he would have the precedence to ask for that fight, to give Loma an incentive to fight him. Whereas when Davis won a title, all he did was hold it hostage. Lost it on a scale, was gifted another one, held that one hostage too. Thank God that he's not holding any major titles at 135. Thank God he's just holding a baby belt that, you know what, nobody really wants anyway. But that guy, Teofimo Lopez, in his very next fight, he could be on a pay-per-view. So if Davis is this big star, why is it that that guy, and Vasyl Lomachenko, why is it that they may beat Gervonta Davis to a pay-per-view if he's supposed to be a cash cow? If he's supposed to be a big star? Why is it that the Saudis are actually bidding on that fight? They want to host that fight. We know what kind of money the Saudis have got. We know that they've got the kind of money that can entice just about anybody, okay? They got long money, those guys. And they put a bid in for Loma versus Lopez, whereas we didn't hear jack shit about Saudis putting a bid in for any Gervonta Davis fight. They didn't put a bid in for Davis versus Gamboa.
They didn't.
Right? And we knew that fight was coming for months. But you didn't hear about the Saudis bidding on it. So in what way
is he a star?
Is Gervonta Davis any kind of a superstar? I mean, seriously. 600,000 views on a premium cable network? Daniel Jacobs did more than that. You don't think he's a superstar? So give me a break with the propaganda, right? You guys don't fool anybody. Nobody's dumb around here. It's ring IQ. And finally, unified heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua had this to say. He says, "We unified in 20 fights. Wilder has not unified in 40. Why not?" And the news here, the story here, isn't so much what's being asked as opposed to who's the one asking it. Because this kind of a question is something that the fans often mull over and fight over. That if Deontay Wilder's got this fantastic think tank of financial geniuses, then why is he not sitting here today as a unified champion?
Why not?
Even though he's been around much longer than Anthony Joshua. What the fuck was the holdup? You've been around for 11 years, 43 pro fights. Why hasn't it happened?
Why?
That is, if you are everything your fans say you are. And in truth, for us here at The Relay, for us here at Ring IQ, both me and you guys, the subscribers.
Shout out to y'all.
That's a rhetorical question because we all know what the actual holdup was. We don't have any illusions about why that never happened for Deontay Wilder. But it's that Anthony Joshua, as opposed to just the spectators, in what is a spectator sport, the news is that he's the one asking it. That it's about time he take that kind of a stance with Deontay Wilder, take that kind of a demeanor. Tell the truth of it, okay? Because this guy, he doesn't pull any punches on you, so why are you pulling punches on him? We've been hearing a lot of this kind of candor from Anthony Joshua, addressing what could be the Deontay Wilder fight, several talking points in association with it, as far as, you know, where should it be staged? And Joshua happens to think that it should be staged in the UK because it will draw more of a crowd. And at this point, that's not an anecdote, that's not conjecture, that is proven, okay? We just saw what Wilder's drawing power looks like on its own, without another big-name heavyweight to help him carry the card.
We did.
Okay, the pay-per-view buys for the Fury fight were more than they were for the Ortiz rematch.
Why is that?
The ticket sales, the number of people in attendance, they drew more with Tyson Fury than they did with Luis Ortiz. The numbers are what the numbers are. Regardless of what a couple of mutants on YouTube want to say, the numbers are what the numbers are. So we see what Wilder's earning power looks like in his own backyard in the United States, and it's not even an argument. It's not a debate as to where the fight will get more of a fan reaction and where it's more likely to generate more money. And it's not just money for Anthony Joshua, it's money for Wilder too, because the fight is going to generate what it generates. And they both stand to benefit from that.
They do.
You often talk to Wilder's fans, and you can't get a fix on what the fuck do these guys want. Do you want people to bow to Wilder as the heavyweight king, the biggest draw at the weight, or do you want people to feel sorry for him, that he's not here today where Anthony Joshua is here today, generating the kind of money that he's generating, netting the kind of money that he's netting, to the point
Build venues for him.
Saudi Arabian royalty bids for his rematch with Andy Ruiz. You didn't see them bidding for the Wilder versus Fury rematch. No news on that, right?
Right.
The Saudis only want the biggest and best fights in the sport of boxing. So why is it that they didn't bid on that one?
Any ideas?
It's not like the fucking fight hasn't been talked about all year. Look, Deontay Wilder was active 2 times this year. If he were everything his fans make him out to be, I think the Saudis would have bid at least on one of his fights. If he were everything
They make him out to be.
his fans make him out to be, but we all know the truth of it. And it's different when it's Anthony Joshua iterating the truth of it as opposed to the fans with all their passion. You know, the spectators in what is a spectator sport. It is very different when the man himself is taking the gloves off, putting the diplomacy aside, and just being honest. This guy, you know, I mean, we see what you're doing. It's a bigger fight over here. So if you do want to make history, you know what to do, and you know who to call. But that's all provided you can even hold on to that green belt. One last bit of news that caught my attention in regards to the former IBF welterweight champion, Kell Brook. He's making the declaration that in 2020, he means to become a 2-division champion. And this is a bit of a change from what people thought he was going to do. People kind of thought that moving forward, he was going to try to reintegrate himself into the welterweight division, because as we all know, he was pursuing a fight with the WBO champion, Terrence Crawford, whereas here today, now what he's saying is that he wants to become a 2-division champion. He wants to win a belt at 154 pounds. We know who the belt holders there are. Julian Williams, the unified IBF and WBA champion, Jermell Charlo, the WBC champion, and Patrick Teixeira, the newly crowned WBO champion. And look, you know, Brook's been a bit of a transient as of late. I mean, he really has. He's been singing this tune since March of 2018. You do realize that, right?
Right.
That he's been saying this for over a year. But I just so happen to think that if that were really his intention, if that were really something that he wanted, and something that he were really shooting for, we would have seen more of him this past year in 2019. It seems to me that this isn't necessarily something he really aspires to so much as is settling for. Since things that he wanted to happen didn't happen at 147, all there's left for him to do is to proceed with the campaign as a junior middleweight. And I happen to think that this is a half-hearted attempt, that he's not all in. Because if he were, we would have seen more of him. He wouldn't have ever looked in the direction of 147 to begin with if his real goal in his heart of hearts was to become a 2-division champion. It's not safe to proceed in this sport half-heartedly. I fear that that's what Kell Brook is really doing here.